Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, Jason. Thanks so much for joining me
Hey,
back on the podcast.
it's a pleasure and a privilege. Anytime you reach out, I'm gonna jump and say how high because
Oh,
that's just to me, as part of the Asian American community, you got such a legend and
oh,
legacy in the community, but personally, also for all that you and your family and the temple have meant to me.
oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it was so much fun last time to kind of catch up, get the origin story, and really just connect. And it was just amazing to see and hear about all the wonderful things you are doing as well in the community. And I was like, all right, I want to follow up with that because I know this year in particular, you have been all around, sir. And it's not just the regular, like I'm on a hip hop tour. Like yours is a little more unconventional
Yes,
and
ma'am.
not just a band traveling. You're making impact, you're changing lives. Tell me all about what's been going on.
Since the last time we sat down, it's been everything. Like I remember there was one week a couple months ago, my manager turned to me and he was like, "Dude, this is nuts. Like no one else is that. Not even like oh we're doing it big, but just the breadth of everything." In that one week, I think my friend is a pro wrestler. Her name's Zeta Zhang. She was the first Chinese American woman signed who wrestled in the WWE. Um, so I went and I did an event. We actually co-wrote a song for her to walk out to the ring to. So I
Nice.
went and I performed at a wrestling event. And then I think 2 days later, I was doing a virtual seminar for a college class. And then that weekend, I was playing a festival, a moon festival in Cincinnati. So it's been super active. Um, I've really I've been playing a couple festivals and a couple of gigs here and there, and I just had a project release with the Japanese American National Museum and my friend muralist Audrey Chan. She's this incredible public artist in LA, and we did this public art and flashcard series that's being displayed on the museum right now. And I'll give you a link so you can let your people know where to go check it out online.
Definitely.
And then also, I just actually, it's great that we're talking right now because just last week I got a message. We had two songs in the new season of
Oh,
Kung Fu on
nice.
the CW. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I got that, and I was like, man, I'm super glad that I'm talking with Sifu Mimi this week because got to announce that, got to let you know. Um,
Yeah.
and there's been so much else going on, but just that kind of breadth of staying active in community, staying creative, and really getting to use this art and this touring and traveling that I'm doing to tell our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander stories.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, talk to me about, because each of these venues are so radically different. Like I'm watching you on your IG, and like 1 minute you're like in the middle of a crowd on the floor with them, then you're up on the stage, then you're just like it looks like you're at a museum type of setting where
Hmm.
there's just art and things. So, I mean, from a performance standpoint, I know that there's just a radical difference in the energy you need to bring as a performer regarding the surrounding, right? Even though like you're there and it's like I tell my kids, if there's one person out there or there's 1,000 people out there, you have to give the same energy. And it's very hard to
Yes.
do though, right? Especially if you're in a setting where, you've got this hip hop music and maybe the crowd likes it, but they're not like there for the music, right? They're there for something else. And then you still have to kind
Yes.
of bring that. Talk to me about like what that's like for you and how you channel to be able to keep that energy up. Because no matter what I see, like it's still there's Jason doing his thing, and it doesn't look like you're like, oh, I'm Jason. I'm kind of tired because everybody here is not giving me back the energy I need. Like I see you, and you're 100 plus percent every time. So how do you do that, and how does that feel in those different venues?
Thank you. I just got to say before I get into the answer, I love that we're jumping in with like this very technical performance thing. Like I've gotten, and God bless them all. I've been on so many press things where they're like, "Oh, so talk about being a Chinese rapper. That's
Yeah.
nuts." And I'm like, I've got my spiel, but you're asking me stuff that my friends and my team and I love talking about. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Um, so yeah, performing, I would say honestly, so much of my stage presence and my learning how to have stage presence comes from my mentors. And I would really shout out Bo Sia, legendary Asian American, Chinese Filipino American slam poet. Um, there was a time I was learning from him. He was giving a seminar to some of his students, and he was saying, you know, a good show is not a formula. A good show is going to be different based on where you're at. And he was like, if you are at a, you know, $15,000 a plate fundraiser, that's going to be a very different crowd from a public festival, music
Hmm.
festival. Going to
Yeah.
be a very different energy than if you're at a live studio taping for TV. And what he said was the measure of an experienced artist is that they know how to play to these different environments
Yeah.
and still bring intensity, but also understand what the audience needs. And that's something that I always have thought about. And I'm very proud that over the last couple of years of touring and performing intensively, um, have learned and really I'm at a point where I think of every performance as a conversation with the audience, and it's such a cliched, like artsy thing to say, like, oh, but I mean, you know how it is, right? Like Sifu, like when you do like a Kung Fu demo,
Hmm.
right? If you're at like a mall versus if you're at like a Chinese American cultural center
Right.
versus if you're in front of like a studio exec,
Hmm.
you're gonna give them you, but you're also, I always think of it as a Venn diagram. It's like, what are people here to get?
Hmm.
What do I have to give? And what's the overlap in the middle?
Hmm.
So what can I insert in? Thinking about it's very psychological, right? You
Yeah.
look at the demographics of the crowd and you say, okay, if I was, 55-year-old multi millionaire, I've been eating and drinking with friends, what's going to catch their attention and
Yeah.
make them feel like, hey, I'm gonna take a minute pause from talking with my friends uh, to listen to this kid. For a 28-year-old startup entrepreneur, you know, they've had the same night. What are they looking to do?
Hmm.
And it becomes really about. I've been talking with my team recently about this idea of reading the room.
Yeah. Reading the
Just
room. Exactly.
what do people sometimes, and this is something that I think is so important for performing artists, is you gotta have no ego, ego death, right? Like if I come in saying, yo, I'm a cool rapper, so I'm a move like this and I'm a rap like this, and I mean it might work, but also that's very based on me imposing my will onto the situation, you know, versus coming in and saying, I want to lend something to the proceedings.
Hmm.
What is the appropriate thing that will get people leaving? This is something that, again, one of my mentors, Ariana Bosco, Dante Bosco's sister,
Hmm.
she taught me is that people aren't going to remember a single word of your lyrics, but they're going to remember how you made them feel for that
Hmm.
15 to 35 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, what can I give them so that they walk away being like, yo, my night was made better. The energy I wanted, the experience I wanted, the time I had with my friends was better because he got up and did his thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will have to say though, when people are drinking it generally, they're usually a little bit of a warmer crowd. Like we find.
That's true.
And they're not drinking too much, that is. But I just
Yes.
because then it's the other direction. Then you just get, yeah. So there's a fine line. But I just find it fascinating because I think there's like a little bit of empathy there, even though it's very, very different in terms of like what we do and what you're doing. I think it's interesting because you kind of have a bit more of the ability to flip it. Like if you feel and you're reading the room, you get up there and you're like, oh, I see this younger crowd and this is what they're wanting. But then you realize, oh, maybe they're in this mood because maybe something happened that week that brought the
Mm-hmm.
energy to this and you didn't know about it and nobody gave you the right notes. Cause that happens too. Like people don't inform you of the whole situation until halfway through something. It's just I've run into the same thing. And so I think it's cool that you'd be able to probably read the room and be able to actually flip it, pick a different song, or maybe take a minute and talk to them and then like kind of
Yes.
bring them in and see where they're at and kind of like use that energy back and forth. I think it's kind of like it's like sparring, it's like this fascinating thing where you're literally like, okay, let me feel you out. How are you, how hard do you want to hit and back and forth. So it's so interesting because I think people understand or don't get the fact that performance is a two-way thing, that energy goes back and forth, that it's not just the person on stage. Like it's very much, we feed off of what we're getting as well. And I think there's a little misconception of like, you're here to entertain me, go. And it's just it makes it a bit of a challenge. So I have a lot of empathy for that. So that's why I like to talk about it and ask about it, because I'm always fascinated to hear from professionals when they're up there, like what that's like for you. Have there been times where uh you've literally been like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I have to completely 360, 180 this and just go in the other direction." Have you been, or do you generally get a good gauge beforehand?
Yeah, so honestly, like this is something that my magician friends teach me. My boy
Okay.
Dre, he's this
Okay.
really dope. He's actually a taekwondo instructor, but he's
Nice.
also a professional magician.
Nice.
And what he taught me is that the magic trick or the effect or whatever the illusion,
Yeah.
whatever it is, it doesn't happen in the moment. It happens in the preparation,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Because you know what I'm saying? It's
It's the
not like
setup, right?
when, yeah, right. Like it's not like you sign that dollar bill and then they take the lemon and do all this stuff to it and now magically it's in there. They prepare that lemon 3 hours before because
Right.
they're like, okay, I'm gonna find someone, I'm gonna do this. And so that's really what it's like for me when I'm prepping a
Okay.
show. We'll do, sound check. And then between sound check and when I hit stage, I'm, you know, backstage, but looking at the audience.
Mhm.
I'm looking at how the
Nice.
audience is responding to other acts that are going on before me in the order.
Right.
I'm kind of, and I do actually usually I very regularly switch my set lists up
Okay.
right before I hand it to the DJ or right before
Okay.
my DJ and I go on. I mean, not right before, hopefully, but I'll be like, hey,
If you
Sharon
have
or
to.
Rob or
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be like, let's actually cut song 4. I think it's too slow.
Right,
Or
right,
hey,
right.
I don't think they're ready to go that high. Let's start out a little more poetic. And that happens all the time.
Mhm.
Um, I will say there was this one time it was actually my first live gig back from pandemic, and I felt a little rusty,
Oh,
maybe,
yeah,
is what
yeah, it's
happened.
kinda daunting.
Right. Yeah, and so what happened? There was a really I was out. I think I was in Illinois, um, somewhere like that. But there was a local rapper, a dude who actually was from the college,
Okay.
who performed before me, and his energy was so good, and he was so hype. I was like, hey, damn, he really got them up there. Let me try to match that, and it
Mm,
did not work.
I
I'll be
see, I
real, it did
see.
not work because my material, I think my material, and also looking back now, even right after the show, I was like, man, if I just come in with confidence, but establish a different vibe, I think it would have given them some contrast, right? They were just going up, they were dancing. And then if I came in and I got them chilled out and did something very lyrical and poetic, I think it would have hit harder. But I
Mhm.
tried to come in and match his energy, and that
Right.
was a more natural energy for him than me. And it was also, I think, too same.
Right, right,
So
right, right. That's where
these
you
are
want
all,
dynamics,
yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
the simple like music trick right there. It's like you never want it to be the same, right? It's got to be a yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. But I mean, those are the times we learn, right? And I mean, it's
Absolutely.
like comics. Like you hear all the time. They're like, oh, like if we if we've never bombed on stage, then we wouldn't be where we like you wouldn't get the experience that you have. And so it's hopefully not to major detriment of shows, but that you get, you get to you learn as you go. Probably asked you this last time, but I can't recall. Like, do you have kind of a pre-show ritual? Is there like a breathing thing you do, or is there like a song that you listen to hype yourself up, or is there kind of a pre-show thing that you do to prep?
Yeah, I've started evolving one, and it's constantly evolving. Some things I do, I don't eat before a show. I actually don't.
How far?
Yeah,
Wait, I mean, when you say you don't eat,
like
like
all
what's the
day.
shows that like? So if the show's at night, you don't eat all day.
Yeah, maybe I'll eat a very, very light meal in the early afternoon, but
Okay.
I like going in hungry.
Wow.
And for some reason, that works for me. For some
Okay.
reason, I'll drink some coffee. I'll drink
Wow.
in my tour rider. I ask for um, coffee or energy drinks and
Okay.
kombucha, and
Okay.
I'll just drink that and a bunch of water,
Wow.
and then I kind of just like being in that space and that energy. I get very, very, very introverted before a show. I
Okay.
really only want like people that are very close to me that I feel safe with around me. And I don't we don't even really talk. I just sort of get in the zone. And
Right.
then maybe 2 to 5 minutes before it's stage time, I just get really energetic but intense, like focused,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
Um I'll pray sometimes. I'll pray just like, yo, I hope, I give these people something that they need.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of it is just sort of about kind of it feels, and hopefully not with no negative connotations, but it feels like kind of this winding up of potential energy and this
Mhm.
preparation to just explode. So when I get on stage, it like cuts through you know exactly what I'm saying from like kung fu and martial arts when
Yeah.
there's the moves that snap and there's the moves that have power but don't snap. And when I hit stage, I always want to like snap and just
Okay.
just cut through and
Yeah.
and and get people to be like, oh, okay, he's coming in with something kind of uh it's like a Wing Chun 1 inch punch,
Yeah,
just that
yeah.
like
You're
boom.
totally like chambered and then you're ready to go. Like, right. I get that.
Yeah.
Then my next question is, do you eat like a million things after the show because
Yes.
you're starving? And tell me, what are your go-to like right after show, or is it just like how you feel that day, like a craving, or do you have like I need carbs or something? I'm hungry thinking about your pre-show prep.
Well, I'm excited because I've got some Carby Gym saved in the fridge, so I'm gonna eat that right after this. Um, I'm hungry thinking about it too. I just eat whatever. I'm gonna be real. I just, like after
Yeah.
a show, I know it's weird. Honestly, I've tried different things with my diet and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pace and the size of my meals. What works for me is just taking in having some like I said, some coffee, some water, some
Right.
kombucha, something very healthy, low calorie, low sugar. Um and then just like pushing through. It's
Yeah.
super weird. Maybe I should, but like I don't even really drink water on stage. I've never had to drink water on like
Wow, this is
I'll
fascinating to me.
it's super weird. I'll do a 45-minute set. I'll do a 55-minute set
Wow.
straight
Okay.
just going. I'll hydrate before I get on stage, but I just push that intensity of just like,
Yeah. You're just like in the zone, so you don't think about the need for those things. I
yeah.
guess
And then I
so.
I get off stage and then
I'm gonna
usually
talk to you in 10 years and be like, do you need
yeah,
to hydrate on stage now? Because let me tell you, in your 40s, like your body changes.
oh
I'm just I'm just preparing you.
my skin gonna have so many issues, Sifu. Um but yeah, and then I just push hard, sweat
Yeah.
hard, dance,
Yeah.
move, rap. And
Yeah.
then and usually in the tour rider, we ask for like healthy snacks like a veggie plate or a fruit plate,
Yes.
veggie straws, um, and my favorite. Okay, so my favorite thing, actually, the thing that I have in my tour rider is like just sushi of any kind.
Oh yeah.
So I don't even care.
Now
Like
you're
it can be,
talking.
yeah, like even very mediocre like supermarket bought sushi. Just
Just so you have it. Okay.
I'm with it. I'm with it. So I'll go. I'll take that all down, and then usually, you know, we'll go out to eat somewhere. We'll
Right,
hit
right, right.
the best one that I had recently. We were in Houston. We
Oh,
were in
okay.
Houston playing an
Lots
arts
of places
fest,
to eat there, yeah.
and we were staying right in Chinatown. So
Mm.
had honestly, I live, in a great Chinese food city. I love Los Angeles. I love the San Gabriel Valley. But some of the best Chinese food I've had this year was in Houston, Texas.
That's
They
what
did a
I've
really
heard.
good job.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
What's your go-to dish?
My go-to dish growing up, my favorite was always beef hao fun,
Okay.
beef with the wide noodles.
Mhm.
Um, right. I mean, honestly, man, I'll eat I just I'm not a picky kind of dude. I'm just everything. I'm not picky at all. Just nothing with too many bones. I'm not really
Oh, you don't wanna
a
take your
Chinese
time. You
dish.
you don't yeah, you're not gonna go through the crabs and the all that takes my husband is the same way. He's like, "This is too much work. I just wanna eat."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm spoiled. I grew up spoiled. Maybe I'm child.
Yeah.
I don't like picking through for like,
Okay.
the and it's good. It tastes good, but yeah,
Yeah, it's just too much work. I got it. I got it.
anything
Yeah.
I can shovel.
I got it. And that's okay. Hey, everybody's got their preference, so it's okay. But I find that fascinating that you kind of do a fast before. I mean, there is a lot to that, right? The fast and the
Yes.
concept of your focus being like hyper on when you haven't eaten because it's like that hunter gatherer or whatever, and your trigger goes on because you're like, I need food. I'm ready to go. And so there is something there to that. Like I said, I know that for me that would not work, and I would just pass out pre-performance, so it probably wouldn't go too well. But that's great. I hope I get to see you do it live someday, um,
Yes.
and then I can see the whole process, the the show, the post, because I'm always fascinated by that and how performers are able to give so much, especially musicians, because for kung fu you get out there and the set's like a minute and you're like, whoo, I'm really tired, I'm done. So it just fascinates me that you can keep going for like an hour almost. That just seems like, wow, it's just kind of different, like, because you can't physically do kung fu for an hour in a show, just by
Right.
yourself. It's very different. So I always find it amazing. But I know that like you're moving and you're dancing and you're moving and it's so much energy. So did you do like formal dance lessons and things like that too? Or is it all just like B-boy growing up type of stuff?
That is a really good question because actually I've been talking with some friends recently who've been coming out to my shows and they're like, "Man, you're like moving different these days. Like you're feeling the
Okay.
music more." And some of my friends who are kind of movement people. I've never had formal training, but two things stand out. I did do a collaboration several years ago with a friend who has who is a movement instructor and
Yeah.
has this sort of contemporary movement company.
Hmm.
Um, and we did this project uh I think it was like 2017. It was sort of a response, naming names to the sort of Donald Trump era and the
Hmm.
rhetoric, a
Yeah.
lot of the anti-immigrant, nativist rhetoric.
Yeah.
And we did a project called Triptych, which was three spoken word pieces I wrote and performed uh, that my friend choreographed her dancers, her company's movement to
Okay.
the rhythm of my words. So it
Yeah.
was really interesting because there was it wasn't based on a music or a beat. It was based on the rhythm, my cadence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so we did like weekly rehearsals for 4 or 5 months. That was super enlightening, just seeing the ways that
Yeah.
my friend Lori Sefton, and her company, the way they thought about movement.
Yeah.
And then one of my right hand dudes, this incredible songwriter named Leo Shah. Um, he trained in choreo during his undergrad time, and he's done a lot of the different choreo teams around SoCal.
Mhm.
And we go back and forth about like intention and movement. And honestly, I even think to speak on it recently, the way I've been moving on stage, I would say the most formal movement training I've had is through Kung Fu,
Mm,
is through
okay.
like long fist, and I studied a little bit of adapted Filipino traditional martial arts with Bosia, and I did Wing Chun with a master in Connecticut, and I've been realizing recently that those are kind of, because I studied when I was young, so those are kind of
I
those
know
kinds of
now.
movements.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of programmed into my sort of physical DNA in a way
Yeah.
where I'll find myself I'll find myself doing stuff on stage, like kind of when I move to the music, there's pieces of like elbows
Yeah.
or even like triangle stepping when I'm
Mhm.
like it's very interesting. But I would say
Yeah.
it's a combination of those three pieces of DNA.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And I do find that they are all very connected. Movement is movement, especially movement with intent and purpose. And so for obviously martially, there's a specific intent behind when you're doing a strike or a block. And then I think even in dance, there's very specific intent into what you're expressing and how and the lines and everything like that. So I feel movement based things are all very interconnected. And I find dancers make great martial artists and vice versa. And you kind of see that play out in other things, and even in like the stunt world you hear like people like, well, I was a one of the girls that I came up with back in the day, she was a break dancer. She was like, that's what she
Hey.
did, and she didn't do any martial arts, but she adapted so well, right, and was just like
Mm.
fantastic. So I think it's just like having that control over your body, is kind of essential. Talk to me a little bit about the spoken word part and how like that is, because it's like there's rap, right, and then there's hip hop and all of that, and then the spoken word is like very different. It's similar but not, right, and there's
Mhm.
like there's kind of a like poetic component to that. And I'm very, very neophyte, know nothing of that realm, only that I hear it and it sounds really amazing and moving at so many times. Like in a lot of the last few years, the things I've heard and, some of the pieces I've caught with your stuff, it's been fascinating. So I'd love to like learn a bit more about that. I'm not that I'm a hip hop aficionado, but I mean, my husband and I
You
grew up
are
in the
though. You
90s
are
and we
though.
love
You
hip
are
hop and
though.
we're like,
Don't
you know,
don't put yourself down like that. No, I see all the videos and I see what you choose to soundtrack it with. So you've been
you can tell
down.
I grew up in the I'm
Yeah,
a hip hop 90s fan, right? Like by the tracks they pick.
absolutely.
But I would love to understand more about the spoken word part because I feel like there's such a like expression that comes with that, and it's very it's very intense.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying one of the immediate precursors to the hip hop movement in early 70s, late
Mhm.
60s was this group called the Last Poets.
Mhm.
And the Last Poets, before anybody thought about, I uttered the phrase, "Oh, that's rap music, that's rapping, that
Yeah.
dude's rapping." They were delivering this sort of poetry that was very grounded. It's in the tradition of a Langston Hughes. It's in the
Yeah.
tradition of these great American Black poets. They called themselves the Last Poets, and then they sort of became the progenitors, actually, of a lot of sort of lyrical hip hop. It's in the same genetic tree, but it
Mhm.
kind of is like just a different branch. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? And for me, the way I see it is it's different tools in the toolbox. You know,
Yeah.
um, it's like I would literally, to put it in the parlance of martial arts, it's like, like there are occasions for which you'll do the big stage show, set it to music. And when you set it to music, the hits come in a different rhythm,
Mhm.
right? Because you got to stay on beat. You can't go boom, 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 hold, unless it's set to but it's more boom, 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 right? And so for different audiences and different venues and different occasions, you might do a routine set to like popular music,
Yeah.
traditional music, no
Yeah.
music. To me, as a writer and a performer and a lyrical kind of guy, it's very similar. So I'll give an example. October 24th, 1871, um, was the Los Angeles Chinatown massacre, right?
Hmm.
The largest documented public lynching in California history. And so every year, the Chinese American Museum commemorates on October 24th. They have a traditional ceremony, and they ring a bell and they recite the names. And this year, a week ago, when we're recording this, they invited me to come in and to share. They said, "Hey, you've got 5 minutes, whatever you feel
Yeah.
is appropriate." And I was prepping for it, and I thought like a rap song, even like a very beautiful, solemn rap song. It's a little weird to be up there, like
Yeah. Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if it's very somber and thoughtful.
Right.
I felt like it
Right.
would detract from the moment.
Yeah.
So instead, what I did was I took this poem that I've been kind of working on about history,
Okay.
past ancestors, etc., and I delivered it a cappella. And so that's what I mean by it's just different,
Yeah.
weapons in the armory
Hmm.
of if my only thing I know how to do is rap over a beat, then there's times when that actually distracts people from what they need in that moment. There's times when it doesn't serve those around you. And to me, that's kind of the balance between it is reading the room and saying, hey, right now, will music bring people to an emotional place that they need or want to be in? Or will it actually take them out of the moment? Will it distract them from what's in front of
Yeah, and I'm wondering though, like that is since it is a tool and it's a skill, then it has to be practiced, right? Because not
them?
all rappers do spoken word and vice versa, correct?
That's true. That's definitely
I
true.
mean, the ability is probably there because there's like you said, it's in the same family, but I think you have to actually actively practice it. I would guess anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This actually takes me to my next thing that we really wanted to talk to you about because one of the things that I've absolutely loved and I'm like gonna probably just tell make us visible to just keep like no just repost Jason Chu's, history snippets because you're doing the work for us, which is nice. But it's such a fun but educational but engaging way to share pieces of Asian American Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian history, right? Like it's been really really fascinating because we're just a volunteer team, so they our kids have just been putting up little Canva cards of like
I
quotes and they're
love
just
it.
trying to get the words out there. But I just love the way that you have been sharing and they've been evolving. Like you've got like green screen going on. You've got like production now. I'm like, wow, what's going on? You've got like full graphics and it's really evolved and become a lot more higher production value on
Well,
those,
thank you.
which means you're taking a lot of time because I know that even just a 30-second clip is not 30 seconds to do, right? That's hours and hours and hours of
Absolutely.
I get that, and I'm like, "Wow, that is." I'm so grateful because it's just great content. So one, thank you for the educational posts because I think they're necessary. And as you know, like the very little spare time that I don't actually have, I've been just working on this legislative thing and just trying to get this AAPI history done. I feel really good about Florida this year, and if a state like Florida can do this we really feel it's gonna pave the way for everyone. Like we like all eyes, I feel a lot of pressure. Let's just say.
Mm,
I feel like there's a lot of pressure here. Because it's true, right? Like, Rhode Island passed and when Massachusetts
mhm.
passes and all of that, it's gonna be great, but it's not quite the impact as if like say Florida or Texas, right? Were to suddenly pass.
Te
Like
Texas especially.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
big. But I feel like Florida can really open that up, especially because we've made had leeway with it. But
Mm.
since it's something that I'm just so you just really passionate about right now, I'm curious like why you started those type of posts because you have been sharing a lot about the AAPI experience and the dynamic and who we are as a people and but I've really seen a shift at late like in the last year of like the very
Mhm.
specific like no you know what I want you to know this date and this fact and here's who was at that and why and I've been loving it and wondering like what took you down that rabbit hole but also like what you found the most interesting as you've been researching. What do you do to research? 30 questions in there, I know, but like, where did you get the idea to really like just kind of take that to the next level versus just, hey, here's a quick fact. Like the production's it's up there, no joke. Like I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. So what it was, honestly, it was a conversation I had in Las Vegas in April.
Okay.
I was out in Las Vegas. Some friends, my friends run this organization called Asian Hustle Network. So
Hmm.
it's also this sort of like Asian American startup business entrepreneurship organization. And they were having their first annual conference out of COVID in
Okay.
Vegas. So I was out there with a bunch of our friends, a bunch of our like sort of community, and I was talking to my friends who do influencer management,
Okay.
and I was asking my friend Mylen and my friend Kevin, saying, "Hey, frankly, and this is something I'm very transparent about. My career's going well, but my numbers are low." And this is the funny thing about my career is, and I'm super grateful that I have what I have, is that, I think there's a lot of people who are advocating for me. Someone like our friend Simon in Cincinnati, or our friend Debbie in Houston, or our friend Tu in DC. They'll be like, hey, this thing's going on. Like, we should get Jason as a part of this because he's the one doing certain things in a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not like, I've got huge numbers on Instagram. It's not like I've got on TikTok 3 years ago and rode the wave up. My numbers are very modest on all these platforms. And I was asking them, is it worth continuing to invest time in
Yeah.
social media if my numbers, frankly, I don't go viral? I think what I get is people who know me and like me, or are looking and watching for a certain thing, they'll check in with me. But it's
Right.
not like I'm like some of our friends, man, in the last, pandemic started, and then a year and a half in, our friend Shu had like 3.8 million on TikTok
Right.
and like 400,000 on YouTube. That's not me.
Yeah.
And
Me
what my
neither.
friend, right? Yeah, yeah. We're we've got hard skills elsewhere, but social media, that's
I'm
that's that's a young person game.
Yeah, I think so. I missed that boat for sure.
So that's how I felt all the pandemic. Frankly, I
Okay.
made my TikTok account 2020. I was
Yeah.
like, yo, people say this is going. I just didn't want to engage. I was like,
Yeah.
I got enough things to think about, and it's April 2020. The last thing I care about is figuring out another algorithm.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right. Yes, like, no, thanks.
but so that's how I was.
Yeah.
Frankly, 2 years. Then this April, I was in Vegas. I was talking to my friends who are in influencer management, and
Yeah.
they said, "Hey, Jason, like we every time I see you at a conference, every time I see you at a show, every time we hang out at a party, you're always saying really interesting stuff. I
Right.
just finished my master's degree in the spring. They were like, yo, every time we talk,
Okay.
like I learned, like you should just bottle that. You should just the things you say in our conversation, do that. Like that, people are looking for that." And I was like, man, I don't know. But then I went home that week. I did my first little like talking explainer, like TikTok. I think it was something like, what is AAPI Heritage Month? Why
Yeah.
do we have Asian? Why? I think it was something like, why is it Asian Pacific American Heritage Month?
Yeah.
Um, and it did some numbers, not crazy wild. Oh man, I'm a be famous, but it did numbers to where I was like, okay, someone's like watching and engaging with this.
Yes, yes.
And it was this interesting intersection of like I believe in they're the conversations I want to have anyways, but
Yeah.
the platform is just at a place where it's ready to receive them, and
Okay.
I'm at a place where I have the bandwidth to do it. So it's been really, really rewarding. I've been able to all the stuff you and I are passionate about: Asian American history,
Yeah.
solidarity,
Yeah.
having a voice. It's just become another sort of pillar, another sort of part of my creativity
Mhm.
as a not in the box, right? And I know for you too, right? Like it's so easy for people to just, oh, it's frankly it's the shut up and dribble. It's like, oh, you're a rapper, or just make music. Oh, you're a stunt woman, you're a kung fu expert, like just be an instructor. Why do you? But it's because for us, these are all our ways of molding the future, of
Mhm.
giving hope and training to the next generation. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And you're right. It literally first week of May, I came home and I did it, and then I've been more or less trying to be consistent since.
I've noticed. I was like, "Oh, this is great. Kids just go to this and then you can hear that fact." And, because this is the thing, I get in front of legislators or I get in front of like orgs where I'm trying to like tell them about our bill that we're going to have and why this is important. And they're like, "Oh, tell me about Asian American history." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know any because I didn't get to learn any." So that's the problem. I'm like, I'm not pretending to be a scholar. I'm telling you that this is the problem. And this is why I grew up feeling the way I felt. And this is what, what
Hmm.
happens. And people have asked me, like, I don't see how this is going to help, like Asian hate or AAPI hate. Like, how is learning about history in school going to help? And it's like, well, most of the people, as you can imagine, asking that, it's because they're not Asian, right? Or they're not
Hmm.
a minority, or they haven't grown up feeling alienated or not feeling like they have a sense of belonging or that they're actually American. Like you are an other, right? So if
Yes.
you're not quote unquote the typical American, right? Like a white American Caucasian, like you're the other. And
Hmm.
you've never felt that, then you don't understand. You don't actually understand what the problem is. And until you understand that the Asian Americans are American, that Asian American history is American history, like that's the problem, right? And so we have to
Yes.
get to the root of the problem, because for us in Kung Fu, it's about going down into the root, going really, deep into something and not just like it's not the more you know, it's how well you know what you know, right? And so just like getting to the root of the problem, and it is a long-term solution. Let me tell you, this is for the generations for when I'm gone. So you don't even have my own kids. So it's not like, oh, I have this direct benefit or something, but it's like I see that this is what needs to happen for the future, like you said. And so why am I on this podcast? Why am I doing these things? Same thing. I started this in 2016 after the election. Gee, I wonder why, right?
Hmm.
Um, all of these things. And I've gotten those same criticisms like, well, just teach kung fu. Like, are you trying to be some sort of celebrity? I'm like, no, clearly not, because I'm horrible at social media. I actually like my anonymity, to be honest. But there's this like dynamic where like, but I need the message to get out and I want to be able to share and I want to be able to advocate and use the small platform that I do
Mm.
have for good and to be able to impact as many lives as possible, right? And how do you do that? You got to get the word out. You have to go to these things. You have to show up to the rallies. You have to be a speaker. And it's a lot, right? But we that's the value of it. But yeah, those posts have been fantastic, And what was your
Thank you.
master's in again? I remember you were in school. What is your study? Your actual
Yeah. So I got a MA in theology, and what I
okay.
studied was sort of Asian American Christian theology,
Interesting.
and Black theology as well, like Black Christianity. So the way I describe it is it's sort of a combination, because people always ask, "Oh, what's Asian American theology?"
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what I always say is, like when you say, for example, Black Christianity, African American Christianity, people go, okay, I have an imagination of that, right? There's a certain way, and a good and a friend of mine in seminary, he pointed out that there's not just one Black Christianity, right? Black Christianity is different on the East Coast, down south, different regions of the South,
Mhm,
West Coast, but when you say Black Christianity, there's
mhm.
an imagination, right? There's an imagination of something that addresses Black experiences. There's an
Right, right.
imagination of a certain social ethic coming
Mhm,
out of that theology. And I say it's the same. I say that Asian American theology basically boils down to ethnic studies plus liberation theology, which is a school of Christian thought and action that was pioneered in sort of post-colonial Latin America, where a lot of post Spanish and post Portuguese colonization there were a lot of clergy down there saying, okay, how do we make a religion that is for and from the people, not top down, but bottom up. And for them, it comes to liberation. It's got to be. I've got this line in a song where I say, if it ain't for liberation, I don't consider that an education. And so the degree was basically saying, like, understand, decolonize your mentality about Asian American identity and culture and community, and then match that with this sort of theological imagination of what if God, whatever God, whatever but what if the divine actually really cares about all these things, right? So it's sort of ethnic studies plus this social theological component.
Wow. Okay. That is fascinating. And so when you go to do your posts, for example, and like, how do you pick and choose what you decide you're going to share? Because you have, what is it, 60 seconds?
Yeah.
It's annoying, right? The
You
real
don't got
thing.
many seconds. No, you
Yeah,
don't.
it's really annoying. And but thank goodness you're like, a rapper. You're very eloquent. You can get there fast. Like, oh, there's times I've recorded stuff. I was like, oh, I'll just ramble on and on and on. And I'm like, I guess I gotta cut this all, right? So that 60 seconds goes quick. So how do you determine A, what you want to share? And then do you like pre-write it out or do you just improv it? And because it's so well done. And I've been so
Thank you.
impressed by them. Yeah.
Yeah, so normally I'm very comfortable freestyling it out. Like honestly, podcasts, speaking engagements, I'll usually go and just kind of have a couple points I wanna put forth and just go with the flow. For the social content, it's very tightly scripted.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine.
Because yeah, because if I want to have it fit within a time limit and get to every detail, it's so honestly like it usually comes out to maybe like 3 4 very short paragraphs, like 2 sentence paragraphs.
Yeah.
Like it can't be more than like 5 or 6 sentences. And so, but I also don't want to gloss over things. And frankly, there's
It's
always
hard.
winds up, yeah,
Yeah.
like, these are people's lives. This is, if we're doing this for the ancestors, if we're doing this to
Yeah.
connect people like, you can't just be like, hey, this person existed. They did this one thing happened and that was it.
Yeah.
Like when I
But
spoke about, uh-huh.
no, I was just saying, but that is our society too. Like they probably would only tune in for the minute. So they're getting something which is better than nothing.
Yeah, so I have like I try to be really careful and God bless me, like it don't always work, but I try to be careful.
Yeah.
And so I'll literally spend time, I have just what I've learned personally in
Right.
grad school and in my community. And then I'll pull up, 4, 5, 6 tabs of
Yeah.
photos and background research and quotes. I try to
Yes.
put in like because one thing that I think is so important is I'm trying never to be like, yo, this is some things I know. It's
Yeah.
like, no, here's
Yeah.
the women and men who've come before us who've
Right.
said this is what it is. Voices from history. I'm not here to be the gatekeeper or arbiter, curator, maybe curator, but I'm not the arbiter or the only voice. And I
Right.
want to
Right.
point to that because that would be a form of erasure in itself, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'll have tabs pulled up. I'm writing out, I write out my script. I open a new draft in Gmail and then I'll write it out. And I kind of know at this point about how long is 60
Yeah.
seconds.
You'll know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll pull up a Google timer, run it through.
Yeah.
And the neat thing, and this is where my hip hop training comes in, this is where my rap training
Okay.
comes in, and
Yeah.
frankly spoken word, is when I run it through, I'll notice certain turns of phrase or certain combinations of words just don't
Okay.
flow smoothly. And then
Okay.
I'll go through on another pass to
All right.
make it at least what to my ear sounds and feels kind of lyrical, kind of,
Hmm.
that has that cadence and that rhythm. But it's so funny because I love watching YouTube, and the cadence of a YouTuber even is so different than the cadence of a TikToker because
Ah.
YouTube, even short YouTube content. I mean, shorts are out now, but a
Yeah.
short YouTube like short form video is like 3 to 5 minutes. Um, there's no room to pause for even a second in a TikTok. For me
Mm,
personally, at least, with all the info
yeah.
I'm trying to put in.
Right.
So I'll get it to this like kind of flow, then I'll shoot and record. But it is very tightly scripted
Yeah.
because of the platform and because of the weight of the material, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely. Well, it comes across beautifully. It doesn't come across like you're a know-it-all or anything like that. Like I feel like what you've just described, it's definitely coming across and it resonates. So, is there something that you've found super fascinating and interesting that you didn't know about as you've started to put some of these out? You're like, wow, this one just got you down like 20 tabs and you just couldn't stop. And then you're like, okay, I gotta put a pin in it. But like, has there been a fact that you've learned? Because pretty much everything I learn is fascinating because I literally learned nothing growing up. But it's so yeah. So I was just wondering like if there was something that like really hit home for you that you were like, oh wow, okay, this is something that's been quite impressionable. I mean, there's so
Yeah,
much, but yeah.
there is so much. There's one thing I found out about, and this was really cool. So I post these reels, I do them very regularly,
Yeah.
and people started leaving comments saying, "Oh, could you talk about this or could you talk about that?"
Okay.
And
You're getting
frankly, sometimes I don't
requests.
even. Yeah, it's great. I'm getting requests, and frankly, often it's stuff that I've only heard about peripherally or was not even familiar with.
Yeah.
So now that there's kind of this social aspect to it, this community aspect to it, there was this Black American soldier who defected and went to fight on the side of Filipinos and
Right.
actually wound up indigenizing and marrying a Filipino woman, and
Right.
and it's like there's no record of what happened after he deserted and left, and stories like that are so cool to me because they remind me that despite the fact that there are these large uh overreaching narratives, there's
Mhm.
also all these incredible sort of outliers, who acted different,
Mhm.
who lived different, who chose different paths. And
Yeah.
I think for both of us, right, as people who've had some very particular, very interesting turns in our lives,
Yeah.
it's such a comfort to know that, there are these incredible stories of folks who come before us who chose a different path, who didn't go again, who went against the grain.
Yeah.
And I honestly kind of feel like me being introduced to that story and getting to share it was kind of like paying into karma. One day, like, I have no idea how history is going to remember me, but hopefully, if I can hear about this person and be inspired by his life, at some point down the line, as long as I keep that integrity and keep those choices right, someone might hear about me and be like, "Whoa, who is this guy? Why did he do that?" And
Mhm.
make I don't know, like a 6D TikTok, whatever they got in, 10, 100,
Oh,
in
man.
like 100
I don't know.
years.
I'm rooting for all social media to just fail, to be honest.
Yeah,
No, I'm just
we should
kidding.
have never
That's
made
so
this stuff.
bitter.
We should have never made this stuff, Sifu.
There's just a better way. I feel like there's got to be a better way. All right. So, I last time I was sorely sad and disappointed that I didn't have you do rhymes for me on the show. And I mean, in my head, I'm picturing it like, Black Thought freestyles on Flex, what I'm
Hey,
saying? But no pressure, no pressure at all. But I would love for you to just share something with me, but with the audience, and so they can kind of hear you, live, is in a sense live.
I would be honored, and I
Yeah.
thank you for asking. Um, Yeah, this last year I've been working on a new EP. It's not released yet, but I've been starting to
Okay.
perform it live.
Yeah.
One of the records is called Kintsugi, which is, obviously named after the Japanese concept of taking pottery that was broken, mending it with gold, and making it more beautiful and whole again. And in some ways even more precious than it was before it was broke. So this one is called Kintsugi. Kintsugi, I had to go broke to get my gold medal. I'm not special. God just outworks the devil. Test metal, the bezel is still. I'm still standing, air cushion my heels. I'm still rapping. Afternoon cat napping, multiple plane landings. Then I go out to tell tales. I Pop story got bops for top 40. That glory is still not mine, but I'm chill. I'm built by the blood and will that got spilled. My sis hitting Yuji Ichioka office, that's real. What move? Needles don't raise pulse. We came off boats, so my people don't wave hop. Strange plots. I believe about half of them. I know what I love. I don't need a freaking algorithm. I'm still standing, and all of my mans and fruit from the trees. Don't forget the ones that planted them. So that's
Yay.
a verse from Kintsugi off
Nice.
of the new, still unreleased EP. So there's only been but so many people that have heard this, and you and your audience are some of them. The EP is called "We Were the Seeds." It'll be out when it's ready, when it's time to get in the
Yeah.
world. But
Oh, I
that's
love
one
it.
for
Thank
y'all,
you so much for sharing. I appreciate that so much. Very, very special.
of
And
course.
I'm of course going to link everything here so people can go through and purchase your label, all the songs and things that you have out there. It's everywhere. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on all the things, right?
That's right. Oh, hey, anywhere. I'm not the best at the social media content. You type in Jason Chu anywhere you want, it'll be there.
It does show
We at
up. It
least
does
have
show
that.
up.
We at least have that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, so I'll definitely link all of that. Are there other things that we need to keep an eye out for? Because I know that you're kind of taking a minute to yourself, but I know you'll probably be back on the road again pretty soon. And if there's other performances or anything, that's all on your website as well, right? Tour dates and things.
Yeah. Well, so what I'd say is if you have an organization, you've got a festival, event, college group, whatever you got, and you are interested in me coming to perform for your Lunar New Year or, APA Heritage, whatever it is, go to jasonchumusic.com. I would love to hear from y'all. The new joint art project in American vocabulary, words into action, is live now. It's on the facade of the Japanese American National Museum, and you can go to janm.org, Japanese American National Museum, janm.org, to find these flashcards that muralist Audrey Chan and I put together. And again, I'll give you the link, Sifu Mimi, so you can share that with your peoples as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, this is always a pleasure. And now it's like number 2. That means you're like a regular on the show. So hopefully you'll be back.
Hey,
And then we can hear verse 2. And
yes.
I want a
Next time,
personal one. I want a personal one next time.
okay,
I'm
I'll
getting greedy.
we can do that. We can do that. Now, for you, I told you already. For you, anything.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been such a blast. And until next time, Jason Chu.
Hey, take care.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.